Plants vs. Zombies is a tower defense type game that was released on May 15, 2009 for the PC and recently in the App Store on February 15, 2010. The game is largely good, but is it good enough to warrant a good score from the GamerSyndrome crew? First, let's talk about everything the game does wrong. The levels are pretty unimaginative and lack a lot of the character that is seen throughout the rest of the game through its characters and unit types. The zombies themselves have a little bit more character, but they do very little to distinguish themselves from each other. They simply walk, fall, eat, and have their heads blown off. There are some that can dig, drive, float, etc., but these are few and far between. But that being said, you wouldn't want them being super smart and varied. They're just cannon fodder zombies after all. So I guess this is more of a pet peeve rather than a reason to dock the game points, so I won't. But not so fast. I do have some legitimate complaints with the game. One of these is that many of the plants exist solely to take out specific types of zombies. This forces you to occupy one of your very limited and precious slot seeds for a unitasking plant that is largely useless in other situations. One of the issues that people may experience with the game is that it starts off kind of slow. For those people who are not willing to put in at least a good couple hours to get into the meat of the game, they're going to find a very shallow and not very interestingly deep, strategic, or rewarding experience. It is a very simple game at its core. Another annoyance is that the game has a fog of war. I thought we determined that that was annoying in the 90s and decided not to do it anymore. I guess PopCap did not get the memo on that one. And of course the Achilles heel of a touchscreen interface is fat fingers. I have sausages for fingers, so there's more than one occasion where I placed a very expensive plant on the wrong square, rendering it useless. Although I have to applaud the game for including so many varied types of plants, some of them tend to unbalance the game slightly. For instance, once I received the free units that cost nothing to place, I was simply able to fill the screen with those units and never worry about spending the thousands of sun points I had acquired. Granted, there are some zombies to combat this, but for a good chunk of the adventure levels, this strategy will work. I'm not usually one to complain about small frame rate dips, but Plants vs. Zombies really chugs when there's a lot of action on screen. I'm sure this is not a big problem for you well-to-do folks that have a 3GS, but us little people with iPod touches will sometimes feel as we're looking at a flip book rather than playing an actual game. That's enough ragging on the little fella. Let's get into the game's positive points. Like I said, the game is very simple at its core. Not a lot of strategy and depth, but that is at its core. Once the game starts throwing a multitude of plant types at you, that is when things start to get really interesting. With 49 types of plant units, the player is able to tailor a strategy that fits their playstyle best. For instance, at one point you get a giant walnut thing. Placing one of these will create a temporary roadblock. Now you can place a spike strip directly in front of that walnut to damage enemies as they try to break through the fiber-based blockage. Although you will be spending the majority of time collecting sun points to spawn a defense, there is the occasional varied gameplay type. There's a zombie bowling variant, a mystery jar variant, and my personal favorite, a belt spawning variant. I'll let you go ahead and play the game to figure out what those terms mean exactly. I'm one of those reviewers that fully believes the price should factor into a review of a game. And in the place of Plants vs. Zombies, it definitely does. For the PC game, it was $20 and totally worth it. But in the App Store, you can purchase this time-sucking title for a measly $3. That's a heck of a lot of value for $3 American bucks. In the end, PopCap did what PopCap does best. Created a simple game that everyone can play, but offers enough depth for lasting play for both veteran and amateur gamers. Although it is nowhere near as addicting as PopCap's Peggle franchise, this is one of those games that you'll be playing even when you're not waiting on the bus or sitting in the doctor's office waiting to get that boil lanced. Yeah, there you have it. A great game for the iPhone that will put your other apps to shame. 4 out of 5 stars, bitches!